Obviously, you've got a lot of programs underway across various sectors. Which are the ones that are giving you headaches?
Oh, so you want to know my headaches?
Please.
Well, I must say that we're doing very well. We've made quite a lot of progress. Since I last saw you, we had expressions of interest from about 331 companies across the world. Yeah. We've completed our evaluations of those companies, and we're about to release the list. We're just collating and getting the final set of approvals before we release the outcome. After that, we will then issue our bidding documents. Our advisors have done all their due diligence. They've submitted their draft information memoranda. They've done all their technical, legal due diligence. So we are making progress. Today we actually started negotiations with the labor unions. So progress is ongoing with on that as well. And we're hoping that we'll be able to resolve all the issues of access to the plants by the time those negotiations are done. The first set of negotiations will take place between today and the 19th of May, and then the last set of negotiations will take place in July. By the 31st of July, we should have concluded all negotiations with the unions, and we should by then have issued the request for proposals to the bidders.
Bolanle, obviously you're talking about...
Our timeline has shifted.
Yes.
Okay, our timeline has shifted a little bit, but we do expect that payment and handover would be completed by December 2011.
Okay, you are obviously talking about the power sector reforms that have been in the news recently, and as you're saying, you're reviewing some of those expressions of interest. Could you tell us a little bit more? Which sort of bidders are you talking about? I know that it's quite a number of assets across the transmission and generation chain that are on offer. Where's the capacity coming from, and what is Nigeria expecting to make financially from some of these privatization transactions?
The interest actually came from across the world. We had some from India, some from China. Basically what we said was that we wanted our investors to show technical ability. In other words, you must come with someone who has operation experience. And then he must also have the ability to muscle the necessary financing. Because you're not just talking about buying the plants, you're talking about operating them after buying them. So interest has been from, we've had interest from the United States, United Kingdom, across the world really. India, a lot from the Middle East, some from the Middle East as well, some from Asia, some from Eastern Europe.
Yeah, and Brazil as well.
In terms of what we expect, the valuation, okay, we might be looking at something, nothing. I would say it would be in the region of, it would be something in the region of maybe $4 to $5 billion. Right.
And what about the concerns that have been raised earlier on, Bolanle, about probably some of the assets being overvalued, that you know, they were in a dilapidated condition, that they'd need to be so much by way of capex in just terms of getting some of these power stations to work well, and the kinds of investments that are needed to meet Nigeria's current generation needs, the weakness in capacity. How have you overcome that in terms of the valuation of these companies?
Well, what we're basically saying is that we're selling these assets without liabilities. So whoever the investor is really just needs to come with its investment. That's essentially what we're saying. At least that is for the generation companies, and indeed for the distribution companies as well. So that for the investor should not be a problem. But they would have the benefit that all the generating plants that we're selling already have supplies of gas. They have evacuation capacity for the electricity that they're going to generate. So that presents, I would believe, an incentive for them. If they have to rehabilitate the plants, they don't have to worry about existing liabilities. They just have to find the financing that would enable them to bring the plants, back to operating condition.
Let's move beyond the power sector and let's talk about the privatization of the state telecommunications company. That process has been fraught with a lot of difficulties. Firstly, the initial bidder couldn't pay, then you had to go to a reserve bidder, and they seem to not be able to come up with a payment. So what's the next game plan on this one?
Well, the saga continues. The reserve bidder has asked us for time because the elections were taking place. They basically felt that their financiers would need Nigeria to settle down a little bit before they'd be able to feel confident about bringing in the financing, and we've given them the time that they would require to do it. So that is expected to be sometime a little bit after inauguration. They asked for 2 weeks after inauguration, which is on the 29th of May. So if they don't come up with the revalidated bid bond, then we have to look at the next step. And there are various options that are under consideration.
Such as?
Okay, you could talk about starting afresh. You could talk about what we call a willing buyer, willing seller, which is basically not starting afresh, but maybe continuing with the ones that you have and calling in a few more. But the problem with the willing buyer, willing seller option is that you might as well just start afresh, given the fact that the federal government is going to bear the liabilities of the company, and those liabilities are running into hundreds of billions of naira. It's important that we are able to at least get a bidder that would be able to cover some of those debts. Another option, which has not it's just an option, is liquidation. So that's a possibility as well.
All right.
So we're looking at various options.
And finally, can you just tell us about other pipeline privatization programs that are underway in other sectors? There's been lots of talk of really giving impetus to the whole process of concessioning the airports. Is that one area where you're going to be very busy? Where else?
Well, you know that Nigeria, we now have an infrastructure concession regulatory agency that has responsibility for regulating concessions. BPE will be like a brain box to ICRC in whatever it is that it does. And we'll be working as a team with ICRC and the various ministries in pushing that agenda. But there's a lot of work that is happening there that it's going to be quite exciting.